You are listening to Jay's Analysis. This is Jay Dyer. That was Ariel Electron bringing us in, my new friend from the classic techno trio X Dream. Check out X Dream online. You can see their stuff. If you are a fan of techno, you've probably heard of them. They've been around for a long time, and so Ariel was cool enough to let me use her track in this intro, somewhat appropriate for the style of material that I cover. Today we're going to talk about Hollywood Esoterica, in particular True Detective seasons 1 and 2. The question might arise, well, why would there be all this esoteric symbolism in film in Hollywood? And the answer to that is multifaceted. There's not just one reason, there are multiple reasons why there would be the usage of such symbology throughout film. And as I've highlighted many times, it goes all the way back to the beginning of Hollywood, the rise of the motion picture camera, which the powers that be quite early on saw would be instrumental for how you could shape and mold the minds of the masses. And so what better way than to utilize storytelling, right? The telling of fictional narratives. We know that Shakespeare's classics, for example, encoded many Rosicrucian and esoteric themes, especially if you read something like, say, Hamlet or The Tempest. We find all sorts of veiled encoded references, as well as various types of numerology, hints at the New World, for example, in The Tempest, which I think suggests a Baconian type perspective, that is Sir Francis Bacon, in terms of the New Atlantis. So fiction has always been a means of crafting schemas or worldviews in the minds of the public. And it's no different with Hollywood. In fact, it expands in a nuclear sense. It just goes wild with the popularity of the film industry. So it's not just sex, it's not just money, it's also the crafting of perspective, right? Perspective management, population management. And this is really the heart of the dark arts, so to speak. And as we fast forward through numerous examples up to the modern day, last year's True Detective is a crucial piece of evidence in this thesis I'm presenting, as well as this year's season 2 of True Detective. So what I'm going to do is highlight some aspects of both seasons from my analyses that I did, both of which have done very well, taken off, more or less viral, mini viral, you might say. If you like them, if you like what I'm saying, go to jaysanalysis.com and check out my True Detective analyses. I go into a good bit of depth, a degree to which probably can only be dealt with accurately through the written form. So you'll want to read those analyses in their full at my site. But this is going to be an audio overview. So if you like what you hear here, go there. Coming from the South, I have a good sense of what Nick Pizzolatto, the writer of True Detective, was after, I think. And I can see his influences. His influences are numerous. Everything from pulp fiction to noir, neo-noir. Directors like David Lynch, who we've dealt with in many articles at jaysanalysis.com. As well as Southern Gothic, which a lot of people may not be familiar with, as this is a specific type of American literature. In my opinion, it's really the only genre that's produced quality writing. If we think of authors like William Faulkner, Flannery O'Connor, greats, classics of literature like that. And when we understand Southern Gothic, we can understand the encounter with the grotesque. And that's what Pizzolatto's after in season 1. Very much Southern Gothic. And I would recommend, by the way, if you haven't read any Flannery O'Connor, to go read her short story. Start with A Good Man Is Hard to Find. That's the first one that's most people encounter and it's very good. And it's also worth pointing out that Flannery O'Connor was very influenced by philosophy, some aspects of the esoteric, as well as Thomism. So the philosophy of St. Thomas Aquinas is something that Flannery O'Connor would study on a regular basis. So this very much informs her worldview and her short stories. So as I say in reference to True Detective, the first season of True Detective captivated the viewing public this year, that is last year, topped only by Breaking Bad in attention and critical praise. While the internet is rife with theories and analysis, few have succeeded in plumbing the depths of the story in its proper fullness. While other sites did produce adequate analyses, several important points were missed relating to specific religious symbolism, as well as the numerous philosophical references given by Rust Cole, played by Matthew McConaughey. In this analysis, I will give the full significance of the first season of True Detective, which ranks as one of the most revealing films of the occult underground since Eyes Wide Shut. The opening sequence lays out a heavy dose of symbolism that cues the viewer into the dark meaning of the series as a whole. We see key images such as backwoods evangelical revival, strippers, the emblematic tree, a playground, a lot of butts, a black eye, and a telephone imposed over a child's head. The meaning of the entire series is thus not merely the conflict between Rust and Marty, played by Woody Harrelson, in their personal lives, or the elite satanic rituals, but the impact of the spiritual degeneration that has occurred over a just 17-year period, from 1995 to 2012, which is the series' time setting. In other words, the spiritual effect that the infernal powers have brought about over the last 20 years have resulted in a massive decline in the moral status of American society as a whole. True Detective is therefore a survey of that degeneration and demonism, juxtaposing what appears as the grotesque, the Southern Gothic, the backwoods existence ruled by an older bloodline, known in the series as the Tuttles, in contrast to the so-called normal America, the family of Marty Hart. Cole sketches out ritual imagery from the first crime scene. As the series begins, we see an offering of a dead girl in a prostrate pose praying before a tree, wearing a crown of twigs marked with a spiral symbol. Detective Russ Cole is immediately aware of the ritual connotations for the killing, noting the meta-psychotic nature of the crime. Educated readers will recognize that the meta prefix, as referencing notions like metaphysics and meta-narrative, are crucial. As I've detailed before with Spielberg films and Philip K. Dick novels, meta-narrative is associated with this higher-level discourse, as we find in, say, Twilight language. I wrote in my article on simulacrum. In semiotics, particularly in Plato's Sophist, simulacrum is intended to fool the viewer into thinking that the copy is the real thing. The copy takes on a life of its own, yet viewed in scale, it would clearly appear that the copy is not real. This is a perfect analogy for the nature of film itself, as well as the role of the director. The writer and or film director is creating a simulacra of the real world with models and pictures, piecing and placing them together in a certain way, just as Roy does with the model train and city that he has built, that is, in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. One may think of the simulated beings in Blade Runner, right? Deckard, or the simulated world of the Matrix. Spielberg has mastered this art of simulation and is presenting a simulated reality world, that of the UFO invaded America, that is intended to produce a certain effect in the population. Can this be taken to a larger scale, to which Spielberg and the director himself is a, quote, toy of the larger galactic forces or entities of the cosmos? Are we a Greek scale of being played and toyed with by a celestial hierarchy? What is applied to the director here applies to the thinking of the meta-psychotic, to use Russ Cole's terminology, who sees a direct connection between his victims and ritual items as copies of the real items. In the same vein, the notion between twilight language is the writing of a script with reality by higher celestial entities, be they angelic or demonic. Here, the Tuttles are practitioners of the, quote, old-time religion, a primal form of voodoo and ritual magic. Mystical toponymy also comes into play, as Louisiana is the setting for the series, where the Tuttle bloodline has long held sway, having combined their beliefs with the indigenous Santeria and Vodun superstitions. Cole immediately senses this, functioning as the series' prophet priest, having himself spent years in narcotics enforcement, as well as losing his daughter, resulting in his, quote, touching the darkness. A committed nihilist at the beginning of the show, Cole espouses the very worldview of the satanic elite, a Nietzschean eugenics stance combined with eternal return, where materialistic chaos returns to its beginning in endless spirals, associating Cole's own mind with the recurring spiral symbolism in the series. Humans are, quote, sentient meat that happen to develop the mirror of consciousness accidentally. And ever since, man is engaged in a perpetual self-delusion of convincing himself that he is a person with meaning. Cole, the dark philosopher, scoffs at these notions, having immersed himself so many years in the battle with darkness. Nietzsche famously stated, "And when you gaze into the abyss also gazes into you," which perfectly describes the character of Cole. At the beginning, the same crime scene, you'll note that Cole sees a spiral wreath, and it is the spiral and the hole at the center that is crucial for understanding this series. In contrast to Cole, Marty, that is Woody Harrelson, is the simpler partner, the average good old boy cop who cheats on his wife and drinks too much. The names of both characters are also significant, as Marty Hart brings to mind feeling, emotion, and simplicity, whereas Rust signifies worn with age and a harsh realism, as well as Cole bringing to mind coal, dark, cold, earthen. The first murder also occurs in Erath, which is an anagram for earth, cluing the viewer into the wider scope of the crimes Rust and Marty are unraveling. Blood spilling on the earth also has ritual significance in most ancient religions, requiring blood atonement. We will see this emerge in Season 2 as well, with the spilling of the blood on the land by both Frank Simeon, played by Vince Vaughn, and Ray Velcoro, played by Colin Farrell. For the sacrifice to propitiate the spirits, blood must be spilt, and often the ground consecrated. For the Tuttles, the earth is their property, belonging to them by blood right and pact with these gods of the land. Deuteronomy 12:16, for example, reads, "Only you shall not eat the blood, you shall pour it out upon the earth as water." Likewise, a famous passage from Leviticus 16, "But the goat, on which the lot fell for Azazel, shall be left alive for Jehovah, to make atonement for him, to send him away for Azazel into the wilderness." Images of the green man also appear. The green monster. In the same line of thought, one of the clues the Tuttles leave for Rust and Marty is the green man, the green monster that the child victims describe. While never specifically explained beyond the inbred Tuttle being a painter, the green monster is strikingly similar to this green man of ancient pagan cultures, focusing attention on animism and cyclical nature worship relating to the seasons. As Cole begins to discover, the Tuttles are definitely patrons of that old-time religion, yet a much, much older version of the old-time religion. In some traditions, the green man is merged with Wicker Man, where human sacrifice begins to come into play. The Tuttles also light fires after their rituals. In the climax, when Rust and Marty enter into the old brick pirate structure on the pirate land, we see charred remains of victims. As the detectives delve deeper into the Tuttle spiral, they begin to see the utterly depraved and statewide scope of the ritual murders. as well as having their investigations curtailed and halted by higher state officials. Reverend Tuttle, a wealthy elite member of the family who runs the Tuttle Christian School Ministries, is himself a pedophile Satanist who supplies the cult with poor and displaced girls from various charities. This brings to mind similar real-world events surrounding ritual murders and child trafficking, as surfaced in the infamous Franklin scandal case, as well as recent scandals involving Jimmy Savile and members of the British elite. This is crucial, as True Detective is not a fictional drama about cops tracking a serial killer. It is in fact a revelation of real evil and who the real monsters are in our society. Rust famously states, "I get a bad taste in my mouth out here. Aluminum ash, like you can smell the psychosphere." That's my Matthew McConaughey impersonation coming in for you. You can smell the psychosphere. The psychosphere is a term in ritual magic or the occult or esoterica, roughly comparable to the ether, the nearest dimension or spiritual realm directly associated with thought forms or the collective unconscious. The psychosphere has a twilight language of its own, where only those with eyes to see are able to read its signs. Rust is shown in several scenes as awake, while Marty, in fact, is still asleep. Both scenes focus on the character's eyes. Rust's eye is awake to the language of the psychosphere, which he had earlier noted was a conversation being had through ritual symbolism. Rust is thus able to peer directly into the psychosphere at times, giving him insight into the depths of the Tuttle spiral of depravity. Through his visions, he attributes to LSD and PTSD flashbacks, something akin to Agent Dale Cooper in Twin Peaks. This will also be relevant to Season 2. We witness, for example, 5 Tuttles gathered around a kidnapped girl wearing strange animal costumes and ritual garb. The animal headdresses and costumes will in fact also emerge in Season 2. Another important element missed by many is the sex slavery. The children that are used are not merely abused. They are in fact sex slaves that have been imprinted with traumatic memories that they later believe were dreams due to being drugged during the ceremonies. The ceremonies were carried out deep in the woods and resembled a marriage, as the kids were raped by men in masks. One of the most striking images in the series is the little noticed indicator that Marty's own firstborn daughter had been abused, as she draws images of sex acts and places her dolls into a ritual formation that is just like the video Rust confiscates from Reverend Tuttle's mansion. In the dialogue with subtitles, the girls discuss that they were told, "You don't have a mommy and a daddy anymore, they are dead." Later, Rust interviews a transvestite named Johnny Joni that had undergone similar abuse, but had repressed the memories as something that he had dreamed. Rust informs him that it was not a dream, but all along, Marty is unwilling to recognize the evil that surrounds him, especially since the indicators are that the abuser is most likely his wife, Maggie's father. Maggie's father appears to be a wealthy, well-connected member of the elite, likening everything to sex. He is the only other adult Marty's daughters are ever seen with. The only other similar image that we see is the photo of one of the victim's mother. The victim's mother possessed that Cole sees, where the girl is surrounded by the men in mass on horses. Thus, it is the same circle of men. You'll notice as well that Rust cuts his beer cans into the same shape and circle. We also see that Marty's daughter has drawn pictures and artwork of the same imagery, and as well lines them up in terms of her dolls in the same patterns. Spiral imagery also emerges in her artwork as she later becomes an artist, as well as angel and demon imagery. According to the FBI, spiral symbology in this nature of this nature relates to child sex cults. And we can also associate the all-seeing eye with its center, as well as the notion of eternal return in Nietzsche, and the idea that the spiral, the vortex, the portal, in some sense transverses space and time and relates to galaxies, black holes, and things in the outer realm of the galaxy or the universe. In my analysis, what no one has understood is that the anal references I mentioned earlier here have a deeper level of significance. In a dark occult sense, the anus is not just an eye, but a lower eye, the eye of the anus, which is a reference to Satan himself, where an opening of the third eye relates thus to the serpent chakra at the base of the spine. This may seem far-fetched, but it is a well-known concept in Hermetic and ancient religions. It is based on the notion of the anthropic principle, where man is a microcosm of the macrocosm. The body itself is a map of correspondences in this view, where the correspondences on the body transfer to the universe as a whole, in the sense of as above, so below. Viewed in this light, black holes or similar stellar phenomena are gateways or portals for celestial powers. Ritual and liturgical elements are thus a means or doorway for opening these gates. I would like to note as well that it's curious in the end of the series that it's Matthew McConaughey's character that sees the portal into the other spiritual realm, be it light or dark, that he's seeing. And isn't it curious that he would later star in Interstellar, where he in fact traverses through portals? Make of that what you will. There's a definite connection, especially when we look at season 2 of True Detective, where there's a curious scene that Colin Farrell's character Ray Valcoro says, "We don't even go to the moon anymore. Astronauts don't go to the moon." Which is precisely what comes up in Interstellar. Now, McConaughey was, as I understand, an executive producer on season 2. So that would be the reason for this. But what exactly is going on with McConaughey and these various deeper Twilight language references, I'm not sure. That's what we're here to find out. There's much more that I get into in my analysis of season 1, particularly the celestial hierarchy, and how the film series referenced a lot of these things, particularly from figures like Dionysius the Areopagite, as well as Vodun sigils, such as Baron Samedi, what they call a Vave. If you want to understand that, then go to jaysanalysis.com and check out my full analysis of True Detective Season 1. But we're going to conclude that much of it. It's about halfway. And we're going to look at Season 2. And from Season 2, we will consider the esoteric aspects and connections to Season 1. And then I will cut that one off as well. And you'll need to go read the full analysis at my site. As we said, Season 2 is a little bit different. This time, instead of focusing on the outer worlds of the galaxies and the universe, we move to the inner world of the psyche. Now, there was some of that in Season 1, of course, with the mention of the psychosphere. But Season 2 is much more focused on this quaternary, this fourfold elemental setup between the primary 4 characters and the process, the journey of thought and experience that they go on throughout Season 2. In a sense, it's purgatorial. They're paying for their sins, their crimes, and they're basically reflecting past traumas that determine the way they live in the present. As I say in my analysis, quoting Carl Jung, all the most powerful ideas in histories go back to archetypes. This is particularly true of religious ideas, but the central concepts of science, philosophy, and ethics are no exception to this rule. In their present form, they are variants of archetypal ideas, created by consciously applying and adapting these ideas to reality. For it is the function of consciousness not only to recognize and assimilate the external world through the gateway of the senses, but to translate into visible reality the world within us. Nick Pizzolatto's second season of True Detective was quite a blend, spicing and saucing us with influences that range from classic noir, such as Chinatown, neo-noir like Chinatown, Mulholland Drive, Lost Highway, and Twin Peaks, The Black Dahlia, as well as a dash of Weekend at Bernie's and a side of chips. In the midst of all this homage, however, we do find traces of the same elements of subtle occult and esoteric elements and themes, almost as disturbingly intense as the last season's psychodrama. In this essay and analysis, I examine and highlight those elements ignored and unknown to the mass of online critics, whose state school arts education long ago disabled any semblance of ability to recognize meaning or significance beyond trite, boring gender obsessions. Indeed, this season's disregard for politically correct absurdities is welcomed and a likely source of much of the critical opprobrium. Last season's intention, I argued, was to capture the essence of the souls grappling with the forces of darkness and light in a world where darkness seems to own the day. Even a nihilistic Nietzschean Übermensch can be tamed and the heart's senses rekindled anew, as we witnessed Rust Cole's transformation and Marty's moral cowardice. Here things become more complex, with a variety of characters in a labyrinthine plot of crooked cops, diamonds, human trafficking, drugs, gangs, land deals, elite sex parties, and mobster moves. Of particular interest to myself was the surprising fact that even Vanity Fair was willing to go down the rabbit hole in Jay's analysis fashion, correctly likening the secretive full moon sex parties of the elite to their most obvious Northern California analog, the infamous Bohemian Grove Club. Although rumors surrounding Bohemian Grove don't involve gorgeous European women. Each character's name is significant, where Frank Simeon, Russian for Simon, means, I would speculate, frankly, God is heard. It also might relate to the vice of simony, or selling spiritual things for money. In either case, Frank's attachment to money for his noble goal of having offspring ends up being the end itself, which was what was supposed to be a means becomes an unfortunate end, as Frank dies in an arid, landless desert. Irony is apparent here, since Frank is the only one who poisoned the California land. Frank was the one who poisoned the California land to ensure that farmers would move away, providing ease of access for his rail corridor investment. Season 2's focus was thus hermetic and straightforward. Each of our main characters will face the future successfully, only insofar as they allow the relationships to their archetypes in the nuclear family cloud or ruin their present relations. Notions of paternity, progeny, and seed dominate, with the phallus taking the center stage from last season's anal focus. And thus we have hints at Freudian conceptions. For Frank Simeon, we get a similarity to the notion of semen, and thus the ability to have children to pass on his budding mobster empire's inheritance, that is, to have land, is the ultimate goal. However, he is impotent with erectile issues. Frank, we discover, was abused as a child, beaten and left for dead, locked in a dank basement that he ponders may have actually been his tomb. As we will see with Ray, Frank is correct in his pillow talk musings, beginning of episode 2, that his life is like a dream. It is as if he is dead and all is paper mache. The esoteric theme for season 2 will be that this life is death, and death is entrance into the waking life. For Ray Velcoro, that is Colin Farrell's character, the uncertainty of the biological paternity of his son mirrors his own drunk father's failures, as Ray takes on the, quote, sins of the fathers as they pass to the sons. Lost in his own mentally constructed prison, Ray struggles to maintain his sanity amidst a haze of booze, pot, and coke, in the hopes that he can gain custody of his pudgy, soft son. Ray's disastrous relationships with his possible son and future and wife are disastrous due to his own mistake in seeking inside information on his wife's rapist. Linking up with Frank and going on bad info, Ray takes justice into his own hands and murders the wrong thug, leading to a downward spiral of more abuse, more outbursts, and emotional train wrecks that bring Ray to the edge of self-imposed death. Ray's name is Raymond, which signifies wise protector in German, and certainly Ray exemplifies this virtue. Yet his last name betrays his fault, the strange modern artifact of Velcro, which is remarkably similar to Velcoro, which is an artifact of synthetic attachment. Ray is attached, like Velcro, to his own past traumas that are largely self-inflicted. As a man of the law, like his father, Ray unfortunately became compromised, like his policeman father, and began a side project of working as Frank's inside secret force tough guy. Leading a double life, Ray is never able to reconcile his double mind, double identity, and doublethink as he edges closer and closer to death with each episode. In fact, he even briefly crosses the bridge into oblivion when he is shot with riot shells and passes into the ether, conversing with his own father about how exactly he will die in the tall trees, as Conway Twitty sings The Rose in full 70s glitz and glam. One of the keys to this season will be this very scene, with Ray's father telling him to wake up, in concert with the lyrics of The Rose. Antigone Bezzarides, Rachel McAdams, was also abused as a child by her creepy hippie commune father's Manson-esque vagabond cohort, snatched away for days in a Volkswagen van and molested in the woods. Hardened by suppressed abuse, and locked away in her unconscious mind, Bezzarides' rough and tough exterior masks a voracious sexual appetite that shocks and startles her average male partners, leading to her own interest in porn as she simultaneously struggles to SWAT raid porn pushers and lecture her sister on sexual ethics as she dismisses her lovers on the force. Bezzarides' relationship to her father determines her course, as her inner anger at the molestation is placed on her father's below lackluster parental performance. Seeking solace in bizarre New Age spirituality, Bezzarides' father is distant and removed, like each of the other main characters' fathers. The subtle references to Carlos Castaneda and the Chessani family's preference for psychedelics by the creepy plastic surgeon suggest the inner shamanic journey as this season's theme, which each character will be forced to embark upon as a contrast to last season's outer world-focused metaphysics. Like Sophocles' play, Antigone has disowned her sister and ends up a stubborn heroine just like her Greek analog. Her sister is a direct parallel to Isamene, as both docile and beautiful, serving as Bezzarides' foil. Like Antigone in the play, Bezzarides defies the corruption of the state to honor the name of her son through Velcoro, meaning that unlike the ancient Antigone, she exits the cave of death. The interesting question here is how she exits the cave of death, which I read as her life previous to the conclusion of Season 2, only by facing the corrupt elite at the Eyes Wide Shut style orgy and gaining the information necessary to expose the criminal network. Could this be done? And in turn, that could only be achieved by posing as a prostitute herself, becoming her opposite, taking ecstasy at the party and regressing to her childhood self, where she sees the face of her molester. The drug trip forces her to embark on an inner journey, set to a dreamy Disney-like score that suggests a possible mind control programming that she recalls. Something out of Fantasia, The Wizard of Oz, or Alice in Wonderland comes to mind as you watch that scene. Highway Patrol Officer Paul Woodruff, that is Taylor Kitsch, also deals with sexual issues in the case of his suppressed homosexual desires, manifesting in their instances of his interactions with men and women, as well as drug binging and blacking out. A former vet and private security operative with the curiously titled firm Black Mountain, Paul is both tempted and repulsed by his former partner and war veteran lover. Paul is missing a father figure in his life too, with a derelict gambling addict mother, we discover, who was also a former showgirl, and who admits that she never wanted a child for career reasons. What all these character studies demonstrate is the immense damage absentee and abusive parenting can create, especially in the case of the role of the, quote, missing male, a trope that I've highlighted many times, hearkening back to Odysseus and his journey. Monarch butterflies are evident in the scenes with reference to Paul, in terms of a process of transformation or alternate personalities. All the characters share trauma-based mind control or trauma-based scenarios from their past in common. And ultimately what this means is that they're prisoners to their past and in their minds. Paul's name recalls, of course, St. Paul, the traveling evangelist who longed to be on the road and forget his past life of persecution. And so with Woodruff, he seeks to remain a highwayman on the patrol force. Implicated in a tabloid sex scandal involving a Hollywood actress who falsely accuses him of harassment, Paul's assassin past as a veteran and member of Black Mountain Security never ceases haunting him, with wood rough being quite obviously an innuendo translating to rough wood. Unintentionally siring offspring, Woodruff is intent on being a good man to make up for his murderous past that inflicts severe post-traumatic stress disorder. Like the other characters, the traumas they have experienced have resulted in split personalities to varying degrees, with only Bezarides successfully facing and overcoming her trauma. In this regard, Season 2 is ultimately a retelling of Sophocles' Antigone, yet much more is at work that should be explored. If you enjoyed what I've said so far, then you'll want to check out my Season 2 analysis of True Detective, where I go deeper into the alchemical and esoteric aspects and symbolism in the film. I should also mention that the curious symbols at the beginning that show us Frank's eye almost at the top of a pyramid, or the eclipse, what appears to be a dark eclipse, will have a direct reference to the blood moon at the time of the orgy. So if you've enjoyed what I've said so far and I've piqued your interest, go to jaysanalysis.com and check out my full reviews, my full analysis. And if you like what you see there, subscribe to jaysanalysis.com for $4.95 a month, where I give you in-depth philosophical lectures that are not tainted by establishment baloney. Thank you.